but we know that Tyler Robinson was raised in a close-knit conservative family. We know it was a big gun culture family. The grandma said something like, we don't even know any liberals. It wasn't school indoctrination. Carrie Lake went off on that. He was in an online apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College, which I don't think was changed.
I would just note
I
the
understand,
family
but
said
they
he
didn't say
changed.
when he changed.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because what you're about to hear may be the most explosive on-air meltdown in Fox News history. Greg Gutfeld, he didn't just argue with Jessica Tarlov. No, he went nuclear.
I want to let people speak. I in no way intended at all to minimize what happened to Charlie. I was horrified by it. I have not been on the five
but
since
the two
then,
sides argument, well, it's like pig Latin to a duck.
No, all that I was saying is could we have all of the information before you just say they did this? Because that is a broad brush to paint with this. And this kid
Let's have a conversation.
No.
Charlie had a conversation. He got shot.
He swore, he snapped, and he declared live in front of millions that the both sides excuse, oh, that's dead forever. And while Jessica Tarlov sat there stunned, Destiny, the liberal streamer who's already under fire for mocking Charlie Kirk's grieving widow, just poured gasoline on the flames. Now, think about this, okay? On the one side, you've got a grieving family, a conservative movement in shock, and a country that's still reeling from Charlie Kirk's assassination. But on the other side, you got Jessica Tarlov basically trying to play the both sides card.
But we know that Tyler Robinson was raised in a close-knit conservative family. We know it was a big gun culture family. The grandma said something like, we don't even know any liberals. It wasn't school indoctrination. Carrie Lake went off on that. He was in an online apprenticeship program at Dixie Technical College, which I don't think was changed.
I would just note the family
but
said
they
he
didn't say
changed.
when he changed.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we need more information before you
Charlie
smear.
Kirk at a dinner
Before
we don't need more information.
Really?
Yes, we don't need it. What is interesting here is why is only this happening on the left and not the right? That's all we need to know. There's absolutely no cognitive.
What about Melissa Hortman that we just talked about?
You want to talk about Melissa Hortman? Did you know her name before it happened? None of us did. None of us were spending every single day talking about Mrs. Hortman. I never heard of her until after she died.
She doesn't matter?
Don't play that bullshit with me. You know what I'm saying is there was no demonization, amplification about that woman before she died. It was a specific crime against her by somebody who knew her. The same. Now you could bring up Josh Shapiro, but then you will not bring up, for example, that was a pro-Palestine person. So don't use your. What about this? The fact of the matter is the both sides argument not only doesn't fly, we don't care. We don't care about your both sides argument. That is dead. For one thing, there is no cognitive dissonance on our side. On your side, your beliefs do not match reality, so you're coming up with these rationalizations.
And then Destiny refusing to even condemn the shooters are useless. Wow, Donald Trump himself begged for calm, okay? So this is not just bad optics. This is humiliation on a historic level. And folks, Gutfeld, oh, he wasn't having it. In fact, he torched Tarlov, called out the media, and went straight for the jugular. If you sat around calling people fascists and now one is murdered, maybe you're not the good guys. Now, that moment didn't just silence Jessica Tarlov. In fact, it left Destiny and the entire online left completely wrecked. Now, today, whenever you happen to be watching the show, we're going to break this down because how Jessica Tarlov just got shut down was completely epic. How Destiny's meltdown confirmed everything conservatives have been saying for years, and why Greg Gutfeld on air, his explosive remarks, this marks the turning point that the left never saw coming. Hit the like button, subscribe, guys. All right, so here we are. This is a country that we're in. We're still reeling from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Unfortunately, we're at a flashpoint. This is a flashpoint moment that is ripping through American politics discourse like a shockwave, guys. And let's not forget who's in charge right now. Donald J. Trump, the sitting president of the United States. And despite everything, despite the chaos, despite the venom, Trump has called for calm. He's asked America to just take a breath, to reject the violence, to reject the hate. But what have we seen on the left? Not calm, anything but calm. In fact, not unity either. Instead, we've seen a movement that looks more divided, more radicalized, and more obsessed with defending the indefensible than ever before. And that is exactly why Greg Gutfeld's outbursts on Fox News matter so much, because let's be honest, guys, most of the time TV debates they're just staged theater. They're completely fake, talking heads, tossing these soft jabs back and forth, but it's just complete BS. Pretending to disagree, but really just playing their parts. Kind of like good cop, bad cop, and they're really both on the same team. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't that. This was completely raw. In fact, this was rather emotional. This was Greg Gutfeld saying out loud what millions of Americans feel, but rarely hear on national television. If you guys support Greg Gutfeld, drop a Gutfeld down below. But when it came, okay, oh, it didn't just shake Jessica Tarlov. It humiliated Destiny and every online leftist who's ever been running cover for this madness. So how did this explosion start? Well, it's kind of simple, actually. Jessica Tarlov, Fox News' resident liberal, tried to play the oldest card in the book, the both sides defense. Now, you know the drill. Conservatives point to a real, documented act of left-wing violence, and in this case, it happened to be the murder of Charlie Kirk. And so what does the left do? They pivot, they deflect, but what about January 6th? What about that random incident? The second you demand accountability, they hit you with a laundry list of distractions. Look over here, look over there. It's like, what the heck? Yeah, so this is exactly what Jessica Tarlov tried to do live on air. But this time, Greg Gutfeld, he wasn't having it. Not for a second. He cut her off and he dropped the hammer. The whole both sides argument is dead, is what he said. Now, that's when the air in the room changed. The temperature dropped. The smiles disappeared. Suddenly, this wasn't just another segment on the Five. This was a confrontation. This was a real one, okay? Because Greg Gutfeld, he wasn't just rejecting Tarlov's deflection. He was declaring war on the entire strategy of whataboutism, right? I mean, like the one tool the left has leaned on every time that their rhetoric is tied to violence. And in that moment, you could see it on Jessica Tarlov's face. Shock, panic, the realization that, well, the usual excuses weren't going to fly this time. Now, this was the spark, and it set the stage for Gutfeld to go nuclear. It's happening in neighborhoods everywhere. One neighbor says, I called Chapter and saved money on my Medicare plan. Another one says, they helped me keep my doctor. Word spreads, and before long, the whole block knows. Now, that is why I partner with Chapter, guys. They've built this reputation that people just can't stop talking about when it comes to Medicare, and it's amazing. So let me ask you, do you want to be the last house on your street to make the call? Now, most people, they're already dialing the phone number down below on your screen right there, and if they're not doing that, they're visiting them directly on their website at askchapter.org/Ron. The phone number is 909-563-8279. Now, here's where things went from tense to unforgettable. That's right, guys. Greg Gutfeld didn't just push back. He exploded live on Fox News in front of millions. He tore the mask off the polite TV debate. He swore, he raged. I mean, he just said it flat out. The media is dead to us. And he meant it too. I mean, he looked Jessica Tarlov in the face, and really the entire left, right in the eye, and said, if you sat around calling conservatives fascist and then one is murdered, maybe you're not the good guys. Now, let that sink in for a second, okay? For years, the left has dehumanized conservatives, right? Drop a yes in the comment down below if you guys are aware, right? So they've called them Nazis, fascists, terrorists. They've whipped their followers into believing conservatives are these evil groups of people and must be stopped at all costs. And so now that rhetoric has turned to blood. Gutfeld didn't just call it out. He drew a line in the sand.
Like, what about this? Or what about that? We're not doing that because we saw it happen. We saw a young, bright man assassinated, and we know who did it. We are not coming up with rationalizations. We are calm, we are honest, and we are resolute. We're not defensive, and I understand the defensiveness. I understand why people are saying, what about this and what about this? Because if you have to face the underlying fact to this, your life is going to fall apart because you're going to realize you're not the good guys. If you sat around and you defended the mutilation of children, you're not the good guys. If you sat 600, 700 cases of harassment against Republicans and you said, but what about this? What about this? And then you see this murder after calling somebody a fascist, you realize maybe I'm not the good guy. That is a hell of a realization to deal with. So therefore, you have to grasp at rationalizations. You don't have to do that, Jessica. They do. I don't believe you're part of that group, but why the hell do you have to mimic and echo that crap to us? He was a patsy. That guy was a patsy. He was under the hypnotic spell of a direct-to-consumer nihilism, the trans cult, and you know that. If you can decide that biology is false, you can agree that murder is okay and that humanity is expendable. How you cannot see that alone and see that for what the evil it is without having to attach all of these other things is beyond me. I'm sorry, you weren't here for a week. You came in here and it's cold, and I'm sorry, but this is a story that is immune to news cycles, it's immune to rationalizations, it's immune to bias. This thing is with us for good, and we all have to deal with that. So that means we can't live by the same arguments that you might be reading about relativism among the media. We can't deal with those stories. It doesn't matter. The media is dead to us on this story. They built this thing up. We're dealing with it. We're going to act. We don't care what the whataboutism is anymore.
No more rationalizations, no more whataboutism, no more pretending that this is just political theater. This is literally life and death. And for Jessica Tarlov, there was nowhere to hide. She got steamrolled. Her both sides line, it didn't just fall flat. It got buried under the weight of Gutfeld's fury. That was the moment that the audience knew this wasn't going to end well for the left. Now, here's the thing. Jessica Tarlov, she may have completely embarrassed herself on TV, but the real humiliation didn't even stop there, because while she was fumbling through both sides, online streamer Destiny Stephen Bonnell was doubling down on the exact same garbage, okay? Check this out. Instead of condemning Charlie Kirk's killer, Destiny refused. He literally said he wouldn't denounce the assassination unless President Trump himself got on air and called for calm. Now, think about how twisted that is, right? A conservative leader is gunned down in cold blood, and Destiny's response is basically, not my problem, it's Trump's job. Yeah, but it got worse, believe it or not. Destiny actually mocked Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, Charlie's grieving widow. Yeah. He suggested her composure during a speech was nothing more than political recruitment. He reduced her grief. He reduced her pain. He just completely ignored her loss. And he boiled it all down to a single talking point. Now, folks, that's not analysis. That is cruelty. That is inhumane. And this is exactly why Gutfeld's explosion mattered, because what Jessica Tarlov tried to do in a studio, Destiny amplified to millions of young men online. Cold, detached, humiliating himself in real time while confirming everything Gutfeld had just said about the left's moral collapse. Now, at this point, it wasn't just Jessica Tarlov being shut down. It wasn't just Gutfeld going nuclear. In fact, it was Destiny and the entire online left being exposed as heartless frauds, the frauds that they are. So here's where the mask really comes off. So instead of looking at Charlie Kirk's murder and saying, hey, look, this is wrong, we condemn it, we want justice, the left pivots. They actually tried to blame you, the voters, the conservatives who put Donald Trump in the White House. That's right, guys. The narrative goes like this. If you didn't want Charlie Kirk to be assassinated, you should not have voted for Trump. Can you imagine this insane argument? This isn't accountability. This isn't justice. This is a grotesque victim blaming situation. It's kind of like telling a family whose house was burned down that they shouldn't have built it in the first place. That is literally like the same parallel to this here. And so Jessica Tarlov, she played right into it with her both sides dodge. Destiny amplified it by refusing to condemn the killer. Different words, same twisted playbook. Don't blame the assassin. Don't blame the rhetoric. Blame conservatives for just simply existing. Yeah, folks, this is why people are waking up and they're leaving the Democratic Party in droves, because no matter how they spin it, no matter how they dress it up, the truth is clear. The left would just rather twist a tragedy into a political weapon than stand up and say, all right, look, guys, this is enough. They're just not going to do it. So if you want proof, look no further than Erica Kirk. Here's a woman who just lost her husband, the father of her children, the man that she built her life with, assassinated for his beliefs. She stood before the nation, grieving but composed, reminding us of the fight between good and evil. And what did the left do? Destiny mocked her composure, mocked her pain, called it political recruitment. Now think about that, okay? A widow standing strong in the darkest moment of her life, and instead of offering compassion, they sneer, they dehumanize, they make her grief the punchline of their twisted ideology. If they can mock Erica Kirk in the middle of her mourning, what won't they mock? I mean, Anna Kasparian, a progressive who's walked away from the left, saw this as a breaking point. When people who once carried the banner of progressivism say, this is too much, this is evil, oh, you know the mask has slipped. This is exactly why Gutfeld went completely nuclear, because he wasn't just debating Jessica Tarlov, he was exposing the deeper rot in the situation. This is a culture that literally defends assassins and mocks widows, a culture that calls evil good and good evil. You see how twisted this is? And America saw it, they felt it, and they're never going to forget what they experienced. And so now, whenever the left gets cornered on political violence, they drag out the same talking point. They wave around reports from the ADL, or they shout out Mehdi Hassan quoting the FBI, most extremist killings are right-wing. Sounds scary, doesn't it? Until you actually dig in, okay? Because here's the actual truth. Most of these numbers come from deranged, indiscriminate mass shooters, people who act out of psychosis, not politics. And the left counts every single one of them as right-wing because maybe they visited a forum once or maybe made a racist joke online. This is why that's their go-to. It's not the same thing as what we're seeing right now. It's not even close, in fact, because what we're dealing with today, this is targeted political violence. People hunting down specific conservative leaders, journalists, activists, even Supreme Court justices. Steve Scalise shot at a baseball charity event. Rand Paul nearly beaten to death. An assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh. A Patriot Prayer member executed in Portland. Donald Trump himself, he was targeted. And so now Charlie Kirk murdered in cold blood. This is not random statistics. This is a movement being radicalized by rhetoric that says conservatives are fascists who must be stopped by any means necessary. Half these clowns don't even know what a fascist is, to be honest with you. But anyway, here's a real kicker. While the left clings to the numbers, America can see the reality with their own eyes. They know the difference between a lone madman and an assassin that's radicalized by ideology, and no amount of fact-checking or reports is going to erase the truth. But here's the other layer to all of this, the generational divide. Now, on the one side, you've got the older conservative voices like Greg Gutfeld, men and women who have seen enough to recognize, basically this is insanity. These folks have seen enough to recognize insanity when it's staring them right in the face. They're furious, yes, but they're also crystal clear about what's happening. Now, on the one side, you got younger left-wing influencers like Destiny, streamers with massive online followings, pumping out venom every day, day after day. There's no break, normalizing cruelty, mocking widows, refusing to condemn assassins, and young men are listening. Millions of them. That's what makes this so dangerous. So here's the real question. Who will the next generation follow? Will they follow Greg Gutfeld, calling out hypocrisy and saying the both sides excuse is dead? Will they follow President Trump, who, despite being targeted himself, is calling for calm and order? Or are they going to choose to follow Destiny, a man who sneers at widows and shrugs off political assassinations as long as it hurts conservatives? This is the battle in front of us right now. It's not just about left versus right. It's about the moral compass of America's future. So by now, you can feel it. You can feel why Gutfeld's explosion hit like a thunderclap across America, because people are tired. I mean, they're tired of the excuses. They're tired of the rationalizations. They're tired of every act of left-wing violence being brushed off with, but what about January 6th? That's what they go to every time. But what about January 6th? But the statistics say Americans see right through that. They know the truth. This is not an isolated murder. This is a pattern. It's the product of years of dehumanizing rhetoric, years of calling conservatives Nazis, years of telling radicals that silencing your opponents is justified. So here's the breaking point. People know that if this continues, more violence will follow, more targeted attacks, more families destroyed, more grief mocked. This is why Gutfeld's fury resonated. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a warning. A warning that we're standing on the edge and the next step could push us into chaos. But here's the difference. While the left doubles down, while they rationalize and deflect, President Trump has called for calm. He's standing for order in a time of madness, and that contrast could not be clearer. So what's the takeaway? Well, it's simple. Jessica Tarlov got shut down. Destiny humiliated himself, and Greg Gutfeld spoke the truth. This wasn't just a TV moment. This was a revelation. It showed America exactly who's willing to defend violence and who's willing to stand for decency. It really revealed the heartlessness, the hypocrisy, and yes, even the evil at the core of the left's response. So let me be crystal clear. These weren't slips of the tongue. These weren't accidental gaffes. These were glimpses into how these people really think. Okay, how they really view you, how little they value your life, your family, and your voice. That is why this message is spreading. They're finished. And so if they can't even condemn murder, if they mock widows in their grief, if they blame voters instead of assassins, then politically, morally, and publicly, they are done. So this is the line in the sand. Greg Gutfeld drew it live on air. Millions of Americans felt it. And now the left has to live with the consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, the game has changed. They wanted both sides. Well, too late. They wanted rationalizations. Dead. They wanted to excuse the inexcusable. Well, not anymore. Because after this week, after Greg Gutfeld's explosion, Jessica Tarlov's humiliation, and Destiny's meltdown, there's only one conclusion left to draw. They're finished. Completely finished.